You are standing on a flat alluvial plain in southern Mesopotamia. The year is approximately 600 BC. The air is thick, humid, heavy with the mineral smell of river silt and the sharper bite of bitumen seeping from the earth in black, sticky pools. Before you rises the city of Babylon, the largest settlement on the planet. Population, perhaps 200,000. Behind its double walls, studded with towers every 20 meters, stretches a grid of canals, avenues, temples and residential quarters that covers nearly 1,000 hectares. But your eyes are drawn to one thing. Rising from the sacred precinct near the center of the city, a stepped mass of baked brick so large it distorts your sense of distance. 7 tiers, each one smaller than the one below, climbing toward a temple at the summit that is sheathed in blue glazed tile and gleams against the pale sky. The Babylonians call it Etemenanki, the foundation of heaven and earth. The Hebrews, exiled here from Jerusalem, call it something else. They call it the Tower of Babel, and they say God himself brought it down. Today we are going to reconstruct this structure from the ground up. Not from legend. From bricks, bitumen, clay tablets, and the physical evidence that archaeologists have spent over a century pulling from the Iraqi soil. Here is what we know for certain. In 1913, the German archaeologist Robert Koldewey completed a major excavation at the site of ancient Babylon, near the modern town of Hilla in central Iraq. Among the ruins, he identified the foundation footprint of a massive structure in the Esagila temple complex. The base measured roughly 91 meters on each side, almost a perfect square. Baked brick walls, bitumen mortar. The remains matched descriptions found on cuneiform tablets in the British Museum, most critically a document known as the Esagila tablet, dating to around 229 BC, which records the exact dimensions of the tower in precise Babylonian units. 7 stages. A base of roughly 90 meters, a total height, including the summit temple, estimated between 75 and 90 meters. This is not the 3-kilometer tower of later legend. This is a real building with real measurements, confirmed by excavation and cross-referenced with contemporary written records. But 90 meters in the 6th century BC, built entirely of mud brick and baked clay, without steel, without concrete, without cranes, was an engineering achievement so extreme that no civilization on Earth would match it for over 2,000 years. The first thing to understand is the material. There is no stone within 100 kilometers of Babylon. The alluvial plain of southern Iraq is river mud, deposited over millennia by the Tigris and Euphrates. Every structure in the city, from the humblest house to the Ishtar Gate, was built from the same substance. Clay from the riverbank, shaped into rectangular bricks and either dried in the sun or fired in a kiln. The brick-making process was industrial in scale. Workers dug clay from pits along the canal banks, mixed it with chopped straw and water in trampling pits, where men walked through the slurry barefoot until the consistency was even, then pressed the mixture into open wooden molds. A skilled team of 3, 1 mixing, 1 molding, 1 stacking, could produce roughly 1,000 bricks per day. Each brick was stamped with an inscription while still wet, the name of the king and the purpose of the building. Thousands of these stamped bricks have been recovered from the site. They read, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, provider for Esagila and Ezida, firstborn son of Nabopolassar, king of Babylon. Every single brick was signed. For ordinary construction, sun-dried bricks were sufficient, but for a structure meant to carry the weight of 7 stacked tiers, sun-dried brick would crumble. The core of the tower used millions of mud bricks for mass. The outer shell, the load-bearing face that had to resist rain, wind, and compression, was built entirely of kiln-fired bricks, heated to around 800 degrees Celsius, until the clay vitrified into material nearly as hard as stone. The kilns were permanent installations near the canal banks, long rectangular trenches lined with fire-hardened clay, fed continuously with bundles of reed and tamarisk wood. The fuel consumption was staggering. Entire groves of date palms and tamarisk were felled to feed the firing process. The smoke from the brick kilns hung over the southern quarter of the city in a permanent haze that residents lived with the way modern cities live with traffic fumes. The Genesis account records the process with remarkable precision. "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." That phrase, "burn them thoroughly," is not decoration. It is a specific technical instruction, and it is exactly what the archaeology confirms. The mortar was equally critical. Ordinary mud mortar dissolves in rain. Lime mortar, used later by the Romans, was unknown in Mesopotamia at this scale. Instead, the Babylonians used bitumen, natural asphalt. It seeped from the ground in pools across the lowlands, particularly near the town of Hit on the Middle Euphrates, about 200 kilometers upstream. Workers collected raw bitumen, heated it in clay vats until it liquefied, and applied it between brick courses while still hot. As it cooled, it bonded the bricks into a mass so rigid that modern archaeologists attempting to separate individual bricks from excavated walls have broken the bricks before breaking the joint. The smell was unmistakable. A petroleum stench that saturated the construction site clung to workers' skin and lingered in the nostrils for hours. Herodotus, visiting Babylon around 450 BC, remarked on the smell before he described anything else. Now picture the construction site. The foundation pit alone required removing thousands of cubic meters of soil, dug by hand with bronze spades into the marshy substrate of the floodplain. Water infiltration was a constant problem. Teams operated counterweighted buckets to keep the pit drained while the lowest brick courses were laid. The base, 91 meters square, was oriented precisely to the cardinal points. This was not decorative, it was theological. The tower connected earth with heaven, and alignment to the cosmic axis was essential for that connection. Surveyors used sighting rods and measuring cords to establish orientation. The tolerances they achieved, verified by Coldaway, were less than 1 degree of deviation across 100 meters, using nothing but rope, stakes, and line of sight. The labor force is harder to quantify, but easier to imagine. Cuneiform administrative records from the Neo-Babylonian period list ration distributions for workers in detail. Barley, oil, wool, and beer, measured by the Silla, assigned to named individuals in named work gangs. These were not all slaves. Many were corvée laborers, free subjects required to contribute a set number of days per year to royal projects. Others were war captives. Others were specialists, brickmakers, kiln operators, bitumen workers, surveyors, who received monthly salaries from the temple administration. The total workforce on a project of this scale probably numbered in the tens of thousands, operating in rotating shifts. They ate twice a day. The base ration was barley bread and beer, thin, sour beer brewed from fermented barley mash, closer to liquid bread than to anything a modern drinker would recognize. Supplements included onions, garlic, dried fish, sesame oil, and dates. Food was prepared in communal kitchens adjacent to the site. Distribution was tracked on clay tablets. These tablets survive. We can read individual workers' names, the barley they received, the tasks assigned to them. The bureaucracy that fed this workforce was as impressive as the tower itself. A worker's day began before dawn. In the cool hours, gangs carried bricks from production yards to the base. Each standard brick weighed roughly 15 kilograms. A man carried two at a time, stacked on a woven reed pallet balanced on the head. For the lower tiers, the route was a sloping earthen ramp that spiraled around the exterior, wide enough for two-way traffic, reinforced with reed matting to prevent the surface from crumbling. As the tower rose, the ramp extended, longer and steeper with each tier. For upper stages, materials may have been lifted by hoists. Cylinder seals depict counterweighted lever systems that could raise heavy loads with small teams. The logistics were brutal in their repetition. A brick carrier made the trip up and back perhaps 20 times a day. By the 10th trip, the calves burned. By the 20th, the neck was locked from the weight on the head and the shoulders ached from the balancing effort. At the end of the shift, a man sat on the ground and could not stand for several minutes. The heat was extreme. Babylon in summer exceeds 50 degrees. Laborers worked stripped to loincloths, skin darkened by sun and coated with sweat, dust, and bitumen residue. The black smears would not wash off. Bitumen wore away over weeks, leaving skin discolored and raw. The fumes from heated bitumen caused headaches, nausea, and respiratory damage. Falls were a constant risk. The ramps had no railings. A stumble near the edge, especially on the upper levels where wind gusted across the open terraces, meant a drop of 30, 50, 70 meters onto packed brick. Administrative records do not mention casualties. They did not need to. The labor pool was deep, and replacements were always available. A man who fell was not mourned in writing. He was replaced by the next name on the ration list. The 7 tiers rose in a stepped profile, each recessed from the one below, creating broad terraces. The first tier was the largest, roughly 33 meters high, a solid mass of mud brick with a fired brick facing. Its walls were unbroken except for 3 monumental staircases on the southern face, 1 central and 2 flanking, each wide enough for a priestly procession. Upper tiers diminished in area and height. Fragments of colored glazed brick from the site suggest each tier was finished in a different color, a tradition Herodotus recorded and consistent with Mesopotamian cosmology. Black for the underworld, orange for earth, red for fire, ascending to blue at the summit, the color of the sky, the realm of the gods. At the top stood the high temple, a single-room sanctuary roughly 15 meters on each side. This was not a place of public worship. Ordinary Babylonians never entered. It housed a cult statue of Marduk, chief god of Babylon, seated on a gilded throne. The walls were paneled with cedar imported from Lebanon, a journey of over 1,000 kilometers. The floors may have been sheathed in gold leaf. According to Herodotus, the furnishings included a golden table and a golden couch. A select priestess was said to attend the sanctuary overnight, awaiting divine visitation. The summit temple represented a concentration of wealth, labor, and religious authority without parallel in the ancient world. The name said it plainly: Etemenanki, the foundation of heaven and earth. Not a metaphor, a literal architectural claim, and the claim was reinforced by ritual. During the Akitu festival, the New Year celebration lasting 12 days each spring, the cult statue of Marduk was carried in procession from the Esagila temple along the processional way, through the Ishtar gate, and returned to the tower precinct. The king participated personally. At one point, he was ritually stripped of his crown, struck on the face by the high priest, and forced to kneel before Marduk's image and declare he had not sinned against the city or neglected the temple. Only after this humiliation was his authority restored. The tower was the backdrop for this drama. It was the stage on which royal power was annually broken and reassembled under the gaze of the god who owned everything. Surrounding the tower precinct was the city itself. Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar II was the largest urban center on the planet. The processional way, paved with limestone slabs and flanked by blue-glazed brick walls bearing relief lions, led from the Ishtar Gate to the Temple District. The Euphrates ran through the city center, crossed by a bridge of stone piers and wooden spans that was dismantled each night to prevent unauthorized crossings. Residential neighborhoods divided by canals stretched in every direction. The smell of a Mesopotamian city was distinctive. River mud, sesame oil, animal dung burned as fuel, the acrid bite of bitumen, and the sweet rot of overripe dates falling into the streets. Donkey hooves on brick pavement, water sellers calling from canal bridges, the rhythmic thud of brickmakers stamping clay, and above it all, visible from every rooftop, the tower. You could not live in Babylon and forget it. The Hebrew exiles saw it differently. For the Judeans deported to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC, the tower was not a wonder. It was an obscenity, a monument to arrogance built by the empire that had destroyed their temple, burned Jerusalem, and dragged them into captivity. These exiles lived in settlements along the Chebar Canal, within sight of the Babylonian skyline. They could see the tower from their rooftops. They watched processions move toward it. They heard the drums of the Akitu festival across the flat water. Everything about it contradicted their theology. One God, invisible, uncontained by any structure, versus Marduk, seated in gold at the top of a man-made mountain. The Genesis account of the Tower of Babel, almost certainly shaped by this experience of exile, frames the tower as provocation. Come, let us build a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves. The Hebrew word Babel, which Babylonians understood as Bab-Ilu, the gate of God, is reinterpreted in Genesis as derived from Balal, to confuse. The gate of heaven becomes the place of confusion. The tower meant to unite humanity with the divine becomes the instrument of scattering. God descends, sees the tower, and confuses their language so they can no longer cooperate. The theological message is devastating. What humans build in defiance of God will not stand. The tallest structure on earth is nothing but a provocation that invites its own undoing. And the tower did fall. Not all at once. Not by fire from heaven. By the slow, predictable mechanics of empire and neglect. When the Persian king Xerxes captured Babylon in 482 BC after a revolt, he ordered the upper tiers dismantled. Soldiers pulled bricks from the summit. The cedar paneling was stripped. The gold was melted down and shipped to Persepolis. Within a generation, the upper half of the tower was rubble. When Alexander the Great arrived in 331 BC, he found a magnificent ruin and reportedly planned to rebuild it. He set 10,000 soldiers to clearing debris. They worked for 2 months. They barely scratched the surface. The mass of collapsed brick was simply too great. Alexander died in Babylon itself in 323 BC, possibly in a palace within sight of the ruined tower, and no successor had the resources or the will to resume the project. Over the following centuries, the remaining structure served as a quarry. Local builders pulled bricks from the base. Rain dissolved the mud brick core. The Euphrates shifted course, flooding the foundation trench. By the 1st century AD, the site was a shallow, waterlogged depression surrounded by mounds of eroded brick. Travelers passing through mentioned it as a curiosity, a mound, a marsh, a place where, locals said, a tower once stood that had reached toward the sky. When Koldewey excavated in the early 20th century, all that remained was the footprint, a square of discolored soil and shattered fragments sitting in standing water. But the footprint is enough. Measure the base, examine the brick composition, analyze the bitumen, read the tablets recording rations, work gangs, Material requisitions. Cross-reference with the Esagila tablet's dimensions. What emerges is not myth. It is an engineering project of extraordinary ambition, executed by a civilization that understood clay, fire, and petroleum asphalt with sophistication modern material scientists have only recently begun to appreciate. The bricks they fired are harder than many modern equivalents. The bitumen joints are stronger than Portland cement. The labor organization anticipated methods industrial engineers would not formalize until the 20th century. And the human cost, the years of corvée labor, the physical toll of carrying 15-kilogram bricks up spiraling ramps in 50-degree heat, the fumes, the injuries, the deaths no tablet recorded. That cost is written into every layer, invisible but real. Hold this sight in your mind next time you read Genesis 11. Not a cartoon tower reaching the clouds. A real structure of baked mud brick, 90 meters on each side, rising in 7 colored tiers above a plain, so flat you could see it from 30 kilometers away. Built by tens of thousands of hands, bonded with heated petroleum, aligned to the compass by surveyors using rope and stakes, financed by an empire that taxed barley from farmers who would never see the summit temple. Described in records so detailed we know what the workers ate, and then torn apart by the predictable consequences of imperial overreach, the Persian army, the erosion of rain, the indifference of successor kingdoms, the river changing course, the bricks stolen one by one until nothing was left but a shape in the mud. The Babylonians built the gate of heaven. The Hebrews called it confusion. The earth swallowed it whole. But the footprint remains, 91 meters square. You can stand in it today. If you kneel and push your fingers into the soil, you will pull up fragments of fired brick still smeared with bitumen that has not loosened its grip in 2,500 years. The tower fell, the mortar held,